Welcome to Zoom. Center your meeting ID followed by the pound or hash sign. Oh, enter your participant ID. You are in the Zoom meeting now. There are over 10 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
Hello? Hi, everyone. Bear with me just a moment. We'll get started. Can everyone see the Zoom screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, everyone. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and get started.
I am recording.
Okay. Give me just one moment. In the room, we have, we'll have two introductions if that's okay, but I'm just counting the governance. We have three in the room on the governing body. And then I'm going to just go through who I see on the line, and then if I don't announce your name, please let us know you're on the line. I see Chad Day, Daryl Branson, Don Nacarado, Randy Looning, Joe Benkert, Jennifer Price, Joel Espy, Joe Ribeiro, Lyle Moore, Paula Creasy, and Tony Neal Graves. Is there anyone else on the line that I didn't account for?
Mark Kraft is here.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Shane Caldwell.
I caught Emil. Who else?
This is Shane Caldwell.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Anyone else? We have a quorum.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I think before we do introductions, though, we'll go ahead and approve the meeting minutes.
Okay.
So everybody should have a copy of the meeting minutes. Unless anybody has a question, take a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April.
Carl Stevens will make that motion.
All right. Okay. All right, moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes from April 2017, say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, it's always one of our most challenging tasks out of the way. Meeting minutes are approved. So since we have a, we'll do some introductions, And I'll start off. I'm Eric Dade, Chief of the Fire Department, and I chair the FNCGB Colorado Board.
I'm Tracy Myrtle, I'm with FirstNet.
I'm Brian Shepard with OIT, and I'm the state point of contact for FirstNet.
Kim Coleman Matson, OIC.
Got the name of the City of New York.
Oh, I'm Kenny Aguilar with AT&T Public Affairs.
Chris Olson, AT&T Public Affairs.
Roberta Robinette, State President, External Affairs.
Marcos Cicero, AT&T FirstNet Outreach, State Outreach. Bill Malone.
Business and OIC.
Garrett Noel, AT&T FirstNet, State Outreach team, I'm the state market manager, Colorado.
Doug Clark, Assistant Vice President over FirstNet, State Outreach, AT&T.
Tim Malm, I'm AT&T RAN Engineering here in Colorado. Carl Stevens with Garfield County Communications Authority and the staff representative for the Colorado FirstNet.
Ed Mills, OIT, Brian King.
All right, since phone introductions are always weird anyway, we'll go ahead and just skip the introductions on the phone unless you have a question. I guess then identify yourself before. And we'll go ahead and get started on the regular agenda. So, Kim, you can start off.
Sure. So our team had a meeting last week on May 10th with 7 folks from the AT&T.
Hey, Kim, it's Paula.
What's that?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I can hear you okay, but barely. I don't know if everybody else is having that same issue.
It has to do with the way the phone setup is in this room, so we'll try to maybe ask people to come forward as they speak. I'm sitting close since the bulk of the meeting. Brian and I will be talking, at least in this first part. So.
Okay, and I can hear you now fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll be sure to do that. Great. Okay. It connects to the computer.
I know, but do you guys need connect? You guys need to connect it because we can pull the phone over farther.
But
We lose the phone. That's the problem.
Well, no.
It goes in through the computer.
Well, no,
No, that goes into the ceiling. So
you're the OIT guy, right?
yeah. No, I already disconnected the. Well, here, give it a shot. Okay, everybody, bear with us for just a moment. Right here. We're gonna risk it. Okay.
Just a few.
There we go.
You guys still there?
Yes.
Yep. Sounds great.
Science project was a success. Thank you. Okay. So our team met on May 10th with 7 or 8 folks from the AT&T team, including Roberta Robinette, who's the president of Colorado, and then Jim Bugel, who's the vice president of public safety, Doug Garrett, Ken, and then a few other folks who aren't here today. Brian, do you want to go over kind of how?
Yeah, so I think it was, as Kim mentioned, several folks from AT&T, our whole FirstNet team, as well as Tony from the state perspective. And I think, really for the most part, we just used the meeting to kind of talk through what the next 6 months is going to look like. We talked a lot about priorities, what we were looking at, what AT&T and FirstNet were looking at, what are some of the technical issues that we have to address. What does the state plan look like? We talked a lot about what we need in a state plan from a Colorado perspective. What our thoughts of the process to make the determination whether to opt in or out was going to be, and really talk through a lot of things. We did a deep dive. I would say a deep dive, but we talked a lot about coverage. I think we can talk a little bit more about that later. About some of the specific nuances about coverage and capacity, the different terrain we have, the different users in our states. I'm trying to think what else, Kim. What did we talk about?
I think that covered it.
Yeah. So in general, I think it was a good meeting. We got, I think from the state perspective, we have a better understanding of what the team looks like on the AT&T side and what each of their responsibilities are. We had a follow-up meeting with Garrett and Ken last Friday, I believe it was, to kind of go more into kind of what are our priorities of the state, specific priorities, this corridor, this geographic area, what are some concerns? We talked a little bit about hardening and that type of thing. So I think it was a good start to the meeting. I don't know if, Doug, do you want to add anything to
Yeah,
that?
that was a great meeting. I think you covered it very
Okay.
exhaustively. It was good meeting. It's great having the dialogue as well. And, we're glad to be here today to follow up just for the broader board on some of the
And then, actually, it's another agenda item. We'll talk about how we want to continue to engage with AT&T and FirstNet on various topics associated with the state plan process. So, I think, Ed, I forgot to ask you to key up the state plan guidance, but I don't think it's that big a deal. FirstNet provided a state plan guidance document and checklist. It's primarily for the SPOC team, but it included a list for us to begin. For all of those people in the state, we want to look at the state plan secure portal, or the state plan portal SPP, which is how you're referring to it, and then you're referring to the public portal as the marketing portal. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we have begun brain dumping, and we're around 200 people, I think, right, Brian? Yeah.
I think so. Basically.
We think we might vet that down a little bit, but that was just throwing names at the wall, trying to figure out exhaustively, so we were not missing anybody in the state. That includes the governance group. It includes all of our working groups. It includes like the public safety communications subcommittee that works within the state. The 911 task force plans to stand up a temporary subcommittee of folks who would be interested in participating in that review process. And then we also tried to think of an approach from state government regional folks who work at the Homeland Security Coordinator or field manager level to ensure that they have a view to something, and that way when they talk to stakeholders, they're providing information. So we have a timeline of having to have that to FirstNet around June 7th, which is when we go to Dallas. So we will likely be communicating with all of you via email as we vet that list internally. The other item that came with that guidance package was the terms of use, and that we've actually shared with our Attorney General's office, Ken Fellman. We've shared it with AdCom. They have an attorney looking at it. Commissioner Chandler Henry has an attorney looking at it, and then our own internal OIT contract folks. And do you want to talk about some of the concerns associated with it?
Yeah. So from a just to take a step back again, you know, what the plan that we received from FirstNet and AT&T looks like is that the portal will have two mechanisms. One, a very public portal that any citizen could go in and look at, but will have very limited information. And then essentially a secured site that would have username access, specific username access that would have the comprehensive list of materials needed to make an educated decision. And part of the terms of use is accepting that for those that are secured to access it, what are those terms of use? And in reading it, we discovered several issues that we have, ranging from, for example, it calls for identification from whatever user is signing on. And one of the issues we have, obviously, is in our state, the state does not indemnify, and neither do any local jurisdictions. So there's issues with that. There's issues that the user is signing on as accepting them as an individual and not in their capacity as an employee of either the state or a jurisdiction or an agency, which has, concerns. There were some concerns about distribution and how to manage the distribution. There were some concerns, me personally, about implications that as the state point of contact, I certified this list, and if someone else goes off, is there liability coming back on me? So and a few other ones.
Cora.
Oh, Cora. Yeah, there were some concerns about Cora. If there's a Cora request on the information that is supposedly secured, how does Cora interact with this terms of use, as well as the information there? I think there's ways around that one because Cora does allow for trade secrets and proprietary information, but I believe it has to be marked specifically. So for Cora, every single page that would be considered proprietary would have to be specifically marked. So there's some of those issues. So what we've done is we have a feedback. I just need to set up a call between Ken, who's the Special Attorney General, and then Aaron McLaughlin, our Assistant Attorney General, to look at that and kind of get essentially a comprehensive feedback. I have talked with other states. We're not the only states that has these concerns. We were just on a call, our bi-weekly Western States call, and there was probably 4 or 5 other states that are doing the exact same thing we are, and the concerns were pretty much the exact same. So And most of those states were saying they're doing the same thing in terms of just finalizing it internally with their attorney generals, and then going to be submitting something back to FirstNet and AT&T outlining the concerns. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
And just to, if you don't mind me adding
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
more information, people are definitely aware of this across multiple states. We have had some concerns already shared with us. We're looking at those concerns, and we welcome getting your documentation as well, so we can make sure we take a look at that and how we can resolve that.
Excellent. Cool. Any questions on that? Okay.
So the next item, this may be premature on the discussion with you all, but maybe we can talk about it now, is the state plan distribution timeline. We had understood it was going to be, mid to late June, 45 days for states to review, provide input. FirstNet would take, and AT&T would take 45 days to review that. And then we were expecting something from the governor mid-September, but it sounds like that timeline is going to be made more state progress at the desire of the state versus something kind of formal by FirstNet. And Tracy, do you want to talk about that? Okay.
So because there were several states that said, well, we want to opt in early. We don't want to wait for all these timelines. How can we get going? So as a result of that, that's why you now hear the up to 45 days. So the state plan will be delivered on that week of June 19th. And then states have up to 45 days to do a review and get their comments all consolidated and then sent back to FirstNet. FirstNet then has up to 45 days to look at the plan, to look at the comments, see, tweak anything, and go final now, where they can deliver it to the governor, and that's when the 90-day clock begins, that the law says the governor has 90 days to review. So now this way, the states drive the timeline, so that if they wanted to say, this is great, go, and then it can go relatively quickly to where the clock starts for that 90 days with the governor. So it's no longer, it's a rolling 90 days now. I mean, I'm sorry, a rolling timeline.
But in theory, June 20th, the governor could opt in. I'm saying theoretically.
Yeah, so let's say that the plans are delivered on the 19th and the SPOC says, wow, this looks great, let's go. Gives it back to FirstNet on the 21st, they can change the cover page, say, deliver to the governor, that 90 days begins, and then the governor goes, I'm in. And so, yes, it could go, in theory, that quick.
Okay.
So how does that, because at one of the last meetings, I can't remember which one it was, or a webinar, it could be a webinar, I'm not quite sure. It was alluded to that if a state, whatever state opts in first, they go to the front of the line. So is this, in a way, penalizing states that take the full time to do their due diligence?
The intent is not to penalize states that want to do due diligence, want to even end up deciding to go opt out. The intent is that many states wanted to have the option to opt in early, so it's giving them that option. And so I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Doug.
No, I think it's covered. I mean, the intent doesn't penalize anyone.
Okay,
For states that are fine with the way the state plan looks and they meet the requirements, their first responders are ready to embrace it. They have the ability to move as quick as they want to move during the time period.
So the ultimate build out is not going to be determinant upon the order in which a state opts in, basically.
Well, I mean, when a state opts in, we'll start to bring assets and start construction, and those plans will start to get initiated and acted upon. Okay. I don't want you to be confused on that part, because they're opting in. We're going to start moving forward with activity in that state.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But the objective is not to be.
It's not like a linear thing, like.
Okay. Yeah, just on one of the webinars, and I forgot who it was. They made it sound like it would be a linear type. State one opts in, that task order gets initiated, and they go, and that basically, if you were one of the last ones to opt in, you would be behind the line. You know, if you were state 30 to opt in, you would be behind the other 29, and you would be probably delayed in the infrastructure coming into your state. So
I believe they also talked about that at IWCE.
and maybe that was it. Was that
one of the presentations that they talked about?
I think you're right, Carl. Yeah.
Who opted in first would be.
Yes.
And so no, it's not that kind of a system.
Okay.
But a state who does opt, they wanted to get this in the hands of their public safety first responders quicker.
Yeah.
They now have that
Okay.
option. Okay.
The good news on that is the day one that the governor opts in, you have the capabilities that we'll talk about later on the existing AT&T network available to the first responders.
So we won't be opting in on day one. Just put that out there.
No, that's fine.
And that leads us to wanting to, you guys have talked about potentially having some discussions with a secure group or a closed group. Desire not to share any coverage information prematurely in a way that risks, being anything but officially delivered in the state plan. And so we wanted to talk with this group about potentially having some topical meetings and figuring out, Chief, how this group felt comfortable in doing that without having folks feel excluded, but also, being respectful of their desire to keep their information secure until they're ready to share it in a protected manner. And so we discussed potentially having some topical conversations, one around coverage, applications of devices, cost, whatever, however we wanted to format it, and really wanted to understand the desire of this body to do that in the course of between now and June 19th week of, and then potentially in that time period after. So.
Yeah, ultimately all those topics will be covered in that state.
Right.
So the option to not have that meeting exist, you'll still be exposed to the same information.
Right.
In that state.
And then after state plans are delivered, we can come back with the team and then walk through it, answer questions.
Right.
In that 45-day period.
But we are completely flexible on how you all want to address that. We get more.
So that we wanted to turn that conversation to the body.
Yeah, I don't think I'm opposed to that at all. I think, especially since we really want to look at both, plans and opt-in or opt-out option, the more that we can talk and actually compare apples to apples, I think it's better. So I'm not opposed to it, and I'm surprised if anybody on the board is, but anybody on the phone opposed to it? No?
No.
So the issue is, we had to figure out.
We'll have to break them into groups.
Well, yeah. So the thing is, we either need to have another larger group meeting, and go into executive session, so that it's closed to the public. So we need to do some research about it. Does that type of informational exchange qualify for executive session underneath our the sunshine laws, which I don't know. I know it's legal advice from, it's personnel decisions, legal advice, and isn't there like a contract?
Well, because we'd be potentially engaging in a contract, it would be.
Yeah, so that's basically, so if we wanted to do it all at once where we had a quorum, we would just have to make sure that any type of meeting under that fit underneath the sunshine laws. To Kim's point, if we wanted to break it down, and we could do maybe a couple meetings, a webinar or something like that, where we didn't have a quorum, and had those meetings, much like we did the other day, at OIT, that would be the other option to do that.
I think it'd probably be easiest just to post, because we just post that we're going to have a meeting and an executive session ahead of time, and then we just have anybody who wants to participate, they just have the entire board.
Okay.
It's easier. You just have to look and see what the posting requirement is on the state side.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and looking at the list, it looks like there's several different ones that they fall under.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we will we'll take that on to review that and look into having an executive session. So I guess what would that be? We'll have to have like a special meeting, I guess, because our next scheduled meeting is until after
State plan.
the state plan
Well,
delivery.
in the week of.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll be ready. You guys just drive your process and
Okay.
do that. Flexible.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then the next item is, we just wanted to share that NASNA, the National Association of State 911 Administrators, sent a letter to TJ Kennedy at FirstNet, and they indicate that they hoped it would be forwarded to AT&T. So not sure if it's gotten to you guys yet, but we have a representative representing 911 on our board. We have some folks on the phone who work actively in the state, and so they shared this letter. And Ed, if you scroll to the bottom, so there's 4 topics that they really hope that AT&T and FirstNet will consider related to eventual connectivity with PSAPs and information passed from PSAPs to FirstNet: cybersecurity, data interoperability, shared services and infrastructure, and standards. And so we just wanted to share with the board that at a national level, those conversations are occurring or being encouraged to occur, and we think that's great. Because one piece that is of large concern to us, and again, we'll hopefully know more in the state plan, is what that landscape looks like. And we even talked about having Garrett out and Ken maybe to our next 911 task force meeting in July or September. So, okay, any questions on any of that? All right. So on our alternative planning process, our RFP closed on May 8th. We received 2 responses. Those responses, as you all know, were Rivada. They're now calling themselves Rivada Colorado for the purpose of our response, and the Macquarie Group. And all we can say right now is that the responses are being assessed by a number of you on the phone as scoring participants and in the room as scoring participants or non-scoring subject matter experts. We anticipate qualifying those folks by late May or early June, and then determining based on what we see in the state plan, initial or draft state plan process, whether we would initiate phase 2 of the process. So do you have anything to add on that?
No, just to reiterate, phase 1, as Kim mentioned, is just more of a qualifications, just making sure that the folks who say they could do it, we feel that they could actually do it. Phase 2 would be the actual, okay, let's see your network design, let's see your financial model, let's see your operational model, kind of what you would normally think of as an RFP response to do that. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Any questions on the RFP process?
And just to reiterate, unfortunately, we can't say a lot about the bids. Kim mentioned the bids, not that we don't want to, but our procurement person is very tight, and we respect her, and she's kept us out of trouble so far. So we don't want to go. We don't want to go. We don't want to go against her. So,
to her credit, we went to a meeting and I said, it's public information through Cora, but I can't tell you who bid. And we went back and said, we looked really stupid. Can we say who bid? And she said yes. So yes. At least we're able to do that. Yes. The working groups, they're just still active, and understand that we've asked them actively to participate in some of the work that Signals is doing, and they will be key stakeholders providing input in the next few months. So there's not really anything new on that. And then the projects update, just quickly want to say that we did ask a lot of folks who participated in the data collection almost 2 years ago to redo this updated survey. And the purpose of the survey is to get a updated count of use in the state. Going to provide 100% of that information to all of you. And then also some beliefs or expectations about the network. We want to understand where people are at, and so you guys understand as the state plan is going out and you're engaging with folks with us, where they have missed expectations and where they're right on the mark. So that's the purpose of that.
And we'll get that, I mean, AT&T can get a copy of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great,
yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
Slick P has funded it, so it's 100% yours.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Randy, where are we at with responses?
So we have, Kim, we have 76 responses so far. So that's good given the short duration of that we've allocated for this. We had about twice that number in our 2015 survey, but it went on for several months. So I'm feeling very good about that. And kind of our close date is tomorrow evening.
All right. So if you haven't done it already and you have the time, we would ask that you do that, especially as folks who are active in state planning here. And then the other piece we're doing and we're working on with FirstNet and the NTIA is a piece on some other topics we wanted to consult on around cybersecurity, local control or operational expectation, targeting applications and devices. And so we're trying to finalize that, and we'll be doing those activities, if approved, with our technical working group largely in the course of conversations, and all of that information would be shared with AT&T and FirstNet as well. So that's pretty much it, Chief.
All right, Ed.
Chief's asked me to keep my comments brief, so I shall. We're doing a full court press, trying to get out to at least the 9 all-hazard regions, and we'll continue to do that. If there is any group out there that needs us to do a refresher on FirstNet and give a history of what's been going on, please get in touch with me. Let me know. We'd be more than happy to either get online with them or go to their location if it works out. I will, those of you who are part of CML, want to invite you to go in. We are going to try a webinar on July 6th. And so we're going to try this as maybe a way to push out a lot of information in a very short period of time. Bob Pfeiffer and our team is going to have just basically a webinar on what you need to know about the National Public Safety Broadband Network. We've been at CML every year, and unfortunately, from time to time, we only have, maybe no more than 25 in the room. So this will actually be pushed out to all 5,000 of their members. And they're also going to, we're going to put together a short video that's going to entice folks to come into that. So anyway, go in, you can find that on the CML website. Everything's working well, thanks to the hard work that Sarah put in. The website looks really good. We've gotten some great feedback on it. And so everything that you need to know should be out there. And so please go to the website, use it often, go into Blogger, please. Anything that we think you need to know is either going to be in the newsletter or on Blogger. And if there's something that you'd like to know or concerned that you didn't see it, please let me know, and we'll make sure that it gets out there. And that's basically, I'll leave it at that.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Great. AdCom, anything new at AdCom?
Joel's on the line.
Joel.
Yeah, no, nothing new. We're gonna basically remain in a holding pattern for now until we see how some things shake out.
All right, perfect. Your report's even better than Ed's. All right. Anything up legal?
Yeah, so we shared in the documents an ex parte notice that was filed as a follow-up to the meetings that occurred in March with Ken and Brian and Bob Pfeiffer in DC. And that's really a notice to say that we believe the FCC does have, the law doesn't discreetly say they can or can't force FirstNet to publish their policies 90 days ahead of time, which is what we suggested in the document. And so Ken Feldman cited some case law where he thinks the FCC could, in theory, ask that to be done, and we give our reasons why we think that's of value, not only the FCC, but to the states. So, do you have anything to
Yeah, just that was something that the FCC, Homeland Security Bureau, requested. So when we were out there in March, when Bob and Ken and I were out there, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau specifically asked Ken to provide, some formal comments on that. So that was the source of that.
And then we already discussed the terms of use.
Hey, Brian, Kim, this is Chad. Is your sense that the holdup with them releasing those policies is a matter of just getting it done, or is there some level of secrecy about it?
Well, since they are here, I will let them respond to that.
Okay.
I'll just be honest with you, I'm not prepared to answer that question, so I don't want to take a position on it or falsely lead anyone to an answer right now. Okay. So, but what I can do is I can go understand where we're at with the request and get back to you guys on it. So I would guess that there's no secrecy involved at all. But but I can't comment on the submission.
Are you looking for specifics? Are you saying that there's a policy out there that covers this topic and first not releasing it, or are you?
Well, I think, Chad, and Kirk, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Chad, but I think what you're saying is why do we not know what those policies are right now, correct?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess not necessarily in that way. I mean, I guess the point is, why was there a need for this letter? I mean, why is it not already understood that it's important for us to know those policies to be able to make an informed decision? So,
I got you. So basically, we did, so in our comments on to the FCC, when the FCC opened up their notice of proposed rulemaking back in, oh, good grief, November? Late last year, when the FCC opened up their notice of proposed rulemaking, we did submit comments to that, Chad, that basically we took that position in those comments. And then when when Ken and Bob and I went out in March and actually met with commission staff, we kind of reiterated those positions. And one of the questions from the Public Safety Bureau was, what authority do we have to do this? Could you please provide some more in-depth legal analysis on that one specific element of your comments. So it was something we submitted months and months ago. It's just part of this. It's part of the standard FCC process when they open up a proposed rulemaking. Things kind of tend to drag on.
And are you saying that there's like a specific policy that you think is out there and that hasn't been released, or is it just kind of a general statement? I'm not, can you help me understand exactly
Well, no,
what you're
so
looking for, what you expect?
our position was that the network policies and all the policies associated with opting in must be made public no later than 90 days before the state plan is to be released. What was our position in the comments? And so when we went out and discussed that with the FCC staff, they said, okay, talk to us a little bit about how we would do that and what authority we, the FCC, would have to enforce that position.
And policies concerning?
Security, network operation, all the policies that have been talked about for the past 5 years.
That a state would need to know.
That a state would need to, yeah, that really to understand what the overall implications of the network are and opting in is, that a state needs to kind of know those policies. So the concern was that we would not get those policies until the delivery of the state plan, the final state plan, at which we essentially have 90 days to analyze those policies in conjunction with an opt-out analysis. And so what we argued was we needed to know those policies sooner to actually be able to do due diligence and understand what the impact of those policies are regarding network upgrade, interoperability, all those types of functionalities. For a state to really actually look at an opt-out scenario, we need to understand what those policies are.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Yes.
And which leads me to wonder now if state plans are in a month, and that's a state plan that in theory a state could act on. We have nothing from the FCC or the NTIA on their processes, which
yeah, so
is hugely problematic. Yeah. So, and I know
that's outside of FirstNet, but you're right.
Well, it is, but it isn't.
well,
Right?
yeah. How can that be outside of FirstNet if there's a statutorily mandated process, and there's a three-legged, basically we've got a three-legged stool that's statutorily mandated. Two of the legs don't even exist yet. How can you move forward legitimately with only one of those legs?
And that's a good question and a good point. FirstNet can control what FirstNet is doing. They can't control that. Definitely, they work together.
But how can you move forward on an opt-in when there's when the other two entities haven't even completed their statutorily mandated process? How can that function?
I've been clearly said, right.
I guess, yeah.
And it was announced yesterday that the administration has found somebody to run the NTIA, but he will have to step through. He's currently the attorney for the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Well thought of, it seems like in the press is what they've said, but that will obviously take time for him to be approved by the Senate. So
I was going to say, I'm sure that's going to be the #1 priority for Congress right now.
Probably not.
Yeah, it's shoot right up that that old political scale.
Yeah. So I guess that
I see what you're saying. I got it.
If that's not already a topic for the SPOC meeting, it certainly should be. Right?
Yep.
So maybe it'll be resolved by then. We don't know.
Yep.
And maybe that's all I was asking, was just to make sure that there's an understanding that we do actually, in fact, need to know what those things are and enable to make an informed decision.
No, you're absolutely correct, Jeff.
I believe that there is a session that talks about.
I think there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like I said,
I personally don't know what the content is yet, but I appreciate this feedback.
Yeah, well, and
because we're in the planning process
yeah.
for it, and I'll make sure that the people that are planning understand.
And Tracy's right.
The need to have this.
None of you guys can control the FCC. I mean, the FCC is completely independent, and no one can tell the FCC what to do or when to do it.
But you're still continuing as if the FCC isn't independent of the process, potentially.
Yeah. So how can we actually move forward with this opt-in process when the FCC hasn't even come out and said, here's what part of the process looks like, and the NTIA for that matter. So, yeah.
But no secrecy.
All right. Are you satisfied, Sheriff?
More of that.
Okay.
So I will just jump, Chief, to the fact that, again, our team and Tony, with The broadband office will be in Dallas, June 7th and 8th, getting all of that information. We'll do a download to you all after, perhaps done by email as well as at the meeting. The following week, our team will be at the PSCR conference, which is the R&D leg of FirstNet through NIST. The following week in San Antonio, and then APCO is in Denver this year. So would encourage any or all of you who want to attend, focusing on FirstNet activities. Our grant will pay for that, and you won't have to travel far. So just throw that out there for you, and then we can talk about the meeting at the end. So that's it.
Perfect. I don't think we have any old business, so we'll get into our new business and with AT&T and FirstNet. But before we go down that path, I just wanted to, since we have AT&T here and we have our FirstNet rep, I don't know if it's necessarily problematic, but I can tell you from an optics standpoint, we know that we have AT&T and or FirstNet reaching out to individuals to then go and lobby on behalf of AT&T or FirstNet. And so I know that there's been, at least one fire chief, if not more. Definitely a police chief that keeps getting contacted. And it's very problematic because every one of the associations is already represented on the FirstNet governing board. So the chief of police association is represented and they have their representative. And so when you go and ask a single police chief to go out there and lobby for, say, hey, I'm supporting this FirstNet plan, which one, they haven't even seen the FirstNet plan. Two, they don't know what the state's looked at as far as the governing board, well, what is the alternative plan? I don't know. I don't even know what the AT&T FirstNet plan is for Colorado. And so you put them in a position that they're out lobbying or talking to other police chiefs or fire chiefs or 911 groups while their association is represented here and going down another road. And not only does it put them in a bad position, then you have a governing body saying, well, what the heck is AT&T and FirstNet doing there? Why aren't they going through the governing body? This is the body that's going to make a recommendation up to the governor. You guys can proceed down whatever path you want, but I can tell you it creates some consternation amongst the associations individually and then definitely on a board. So if you have the fire chiefs being represented here, or you have the police chiefs association here, and then you have a single police chief that's going out there saying, hey, this is a great plan. Well, then they go back to the organizations. They say, well, what do you know about it? The answer is nothing, right? And so it lends to some credibility challenges, but it also creates some unnecessary conflict. The other thing is, I know it's been stated that this board's going to opt out or whatever, and luckily you guys addressed it, but I can tell you this governing body was actually put together very intentionally so that every stakeholder was represented on this governing board, and then been very methodical about going through and getting information. You just heard, we'll sit here and have a half-hour discussion about just make sure the policies are in place. So there's been no decision made by this governing body. It's never even come up as a topic, hey, should we opt out right now? The only decisions that have been made is that we want to have as much information as possible day one. So when that state plan comes, we know what the policy is to opt out. We know what an alternative plan looks like. We have the information that's presented from FirstNet and AT&T. So, I think it's more beneficial if AT&T and FirstNet continue to try to reach out through the governing body and through the SPOC versus finding individual advocates out there, because while it's not hard to go find somebody to do it, I don't know that it really moves the agenda forward at all. And in some places, it actually creates unnecessary conflict. So that's my 2 cents. And maybe you guys can talk about whatever you want.
And I would think for me, it would move it backwards every time they do that.
I would agree.
Yep, thank you. I would just say that to your point about opt-in, opt-out, I applaud the state of Colorado for doing the due diligence that they're doing. A lot of the states are actively pursuing RFIs, several is pursuing RFPs. I think it's important for the citizens of Colorado. I think it's important for the first responders of Colorado to understand what the different options are. So I don't want to come across that we believe that you're opting out. I think what you're doing is just making sure that you do the right, conduct the right plan and the due diligence for what the state of Colorado needs. And what we're here today to do is to represent some areas that we'll be providing in the state plan, and then give you the opportunity during the state plan process to make sure that your priorities are captured, so that when that final plan and you're ready to initiate that final plan based on the timelines that are set forth is available, that you feel comfortable that you were heard, and you feel comfortable that that those items were addressed in the state plan as best as they can be addressed.
And Chief, I'd like to say that I'm glad to hear you say about this, that communication, that I've tried very hard over the last year and a half to work with Brian and the team and the board to get as much information to you as possible and to meet your special requests if you wanted TSDR or talking to Harlan or the PSAC, whatever it is you need. So, great, thank you.
All righty, your show.
All right, over to me.
One quick thing, I was just noticing, Chief, since we have, with the presentation, I imagine it might be some similar to what we saw, or similar. Do we want to just kind of open it up for the folks that are not on the governing body to ask questions to AT&T? I'm thinking Scott here and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The majority of them are AT&T over there anyways. So
well, and people
Scott can go crazy.
and just questions on
Bill can go crazy. Well, no, Bill can't. Never mind.
We would like this to be a very interactive
Yeah.
dialogue.
Actually, can I make opening comments first?
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so anyone who's not on the governing body, please feel free, as Tracy and Doug and Garrett go through the presentation, the slide deck, to ask questions and participate, so.
Absolutely.
All right. So I wanted to start out by saying that this is like a big day for me. We've been working together since I've been on board a year and a half. I know all of you have been together 4 or 5 years. And Bill, you wrote me a letter last month saying how great a job I was doing dancing and saying, I don't know and we will know. And thank you very much. Well, ta-da, we're here. And I'm bringing AT&T in force to answer all your questions, to kind of give you the overview of the actual solution that I haven't known, been able to talk about. And so this is an opportunity, and not the only opportunity, that FirstNet and AT&T are ready here to engage one-on-one with the board and whoever else that attends in the state of Colorado. And as Doug said, doing the due diligence is absolutely, you guys are just, I've always said that you're very squared away. And that we all have that common theme of we want to have the network that's best for public safety. And so and I didn't even know what it was going to be at that time, right? And so we're all working towards that same goal, making sure that that big picture was taken care of. So if we want to jump to the slides, I'm just going to go real quick, just have a few slides to bring us up to date, so we're all on that same timeline. But on March 17th, we're going to flip to slide 3 actually on mine, but I'll keep talking when you pull it up. So you know that there was a protest filed against FirstNet that was in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. And on March 17th, they rendered that decision, which was a Friday, and said that they ruled in favor of FirstNet. And then just about 10 days later, on a Tuesday, the FirstNet board met and unanimously authorized the CEO of FirstNet to take all actions necessary to proceed. And then 2 days later, on Thursday, the FirstNet signed the contract. The Department of Commerce actually signed the contract with AT&T. It was on Thursday, and then boom, Monday, the leadership of AT&T and FirstNet met in Vienna, Virginia, followed the following week by region leads. So that'd be me, Garrett. We were all just meeting each other, understanding, okay, what was the solution, and learning, and how are we going to go ahead from there. For me personally, it was like going from, like if you've seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, it's like you have this FirstNet was kind of small and working really hard, and then boom, we have this marriage now with AT&T, who is just large and dynamic, and so just coming together with those cultures. FirstNet was an independent authority inside the Department of Commerce, like a startup, being very entrepreneurial. They were able to do some hiring and develop new ways of doing business, as opposed to everything in this big established government bureaucracy. I was really excited when we were in Reston. I felt the same way about AT&T. AT&T has set up a specific business unit for FirstNet. They've been able to pull out, handpick people to make the special FirstNet AT&T division, if you will, to build this network. And so they have that same enthusiasm, as opposed to this, okay, we always do it this way and follow the line. They're creating something new, and they're being able to do things in a unique way to meet this mission. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. Next slide is going to give you an overview of that decision and how the court ruled, that they ruled in favor, that we were very pleased, because FirstNet had worked so hard making how we couldn't say anything, Bill. to following those rules, that yes, we had in fact followed those procurement, the process, that we had done all of that due diligence and the research necessary in that procurement process, and that the finding that the court made was in favor of FirstNet, that yes, Bravado, when they were dropped, was just too risky. And so therefore, there we are today. And the next slide, we've talked about public-private partnership, and there's been some like, well, what does that mean? So as we know that when the commercial sector tried to do this on their own in the past, it hasn't worked. And so therefore Congress says, okay, we're going to do this public-private partnership. So FirstNet being that public part, what they bring to the table on the left there on the blue is that program management, that specialty of public safety experience through the PSAC, through all the different advisors, going out and talking to the actual users of the system. They bring that 20 megahertz of spectrum, which Congress set aside, and then the $6.5 billion of funding. There's just seed money to get it started. And then that really being able to focus on the customer service. It's not on that short-term quarterly reports. It's real. We're really here to provide that network, the nationwide network for public safety, and we're going to focus on that customer experience and innovation, as we have with the lab, which I think some of you have been to in Boulder. If not, we can move forward with that. And then on the private side, AT&T, what they bring to us is that technology and innovation. Not only is it just a $40 billion investment in this public safety network, it's their existing $180 billion infrastructure. Do I have those numbers right? We're approaching like $250 billion network that they can now, public safety has access to, as well as all that expertise on the cybersecurity and applications, just how to run a network, right? We're not starting from scratch. When I talk to the tech guys, they're very excited that we thought that FirstNet was going to be a year, 2 years, building out from zero with just that band 14, and AT&T comes in and offers their existing network and then more. So that's kind of what we're coming in. That's what we're starting out with, what the public-private sector is. And the next slide, just real quick on the timeline, and I'll turn it over to Doug and the team. Here's what we're working with. The June 7th and 8th is convention. Well, all the SPOC at the national kickoff meeting with the SPOC, introducing what the state plan is, what the states now need to do. Here's the checklist. Kim's already got a head start on it with who will be accessing it, what does it look like. We're having the legal team working about what are this terms of use mean. And then we're looking at June 19th, or that week of, releasing the state plan. So there you go, that's showtime now. We've been talking about it, and now it's time to actually, for you to look at the plan and make your comments. You have up to 45 days to do that. You get to drive the timeline now. And then FirstNet has up to 45 days to review your comments, see, discuss them, and then to go final, we present the governor with the plan, where now it's that official 90-day clock begins. That's what we're looking at. Any questions for me? Yes,
Just have
sir.
a question to clarify on the timeline. So as you indicate, the state has up to 45 days to provide the comments to the governor, but FirstNet also has up to 45 days. So in theory, FirstNet could sign off on day one and therefore escalate the time clock to the governor, then start the 90-day clock sooner. So essentially on day 46, the governor could have a plan delivered.
In theory, right. It depends on what the comments are, and we have 56 of plans that will be presented, and so it's going through those as quickly and efficiently as possible. We're really focusing on the quality, getting the information right, the challenge that we're doing.
But where initially FirstNet had thought you guys were going to get state plans delivered to every governor the same day, that now is more fluid.
Yes, okay. Yes. Because of the states saying, hey, wait, what if we don't want to wait? Is there another way? So yes. So they're all going to be released on that, say, June 19th week on the same day, but that doesn't mean that the governor gets them all on the same day. Good question. Bill?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, with that, I am very pleased to turn the podium, if you will, over to Doug. If you could do any introductions that you would like to do.
Yeah, so
Over to you. Thank you.
I think everyone was on the introductions earlier, so but I'm responsible for the national FirstNet outreach and state consultation team. Hey, can you guys hear me on the phone okay?
Loud and clear.
Thanks, sir. All right. So my role is I'm responsible for the national state outreach consultation team. We talked a little bit about some of the resources that we have in Colorado today, and at this meeting that are part of the team for the state of Colorado as we start to talk about FirstNet, the state plan, and FirstNet Colorado. If you go to the next slide, Garrett. Before I get started, first off, I want to thank Colorado for helping establish the 16 objectives for the RFP. You all were part of the early programs that helped build some of the guiding principles around those 16 objectives. And I want to thank everyone that's participated in the dialogue to get us to where Tracy described having a relationship that we were able to engage with around our RFP response and the award. So thanks for putting the foundation in place for what first responders need, right? So when I look at FirstNet, I look at it as it's obviously the first responder network with the objectives from first responders, created by first responders. Tracy talked about the $180 billion asset that AT&T is bringing to this public-private partnership. I think what's really important about that discussion right there is that you recognize that it's not AT&T, right? It's FirstNet. And AT&T's network is the asset that's brought to the partnership, but we're building upon that network with additional investments, right? We will invest dollars based on your feedback to us, and this can come in the comment period or it can come before the comment period, based on how you want to deliver that information or prioritize the important locations inside of the state of Colorado. We will put investments in place for the state of Colorado, in the state of Colorado, around the network and the capabilities around the network. What that ultimately will do is that will, based on the public-private partnership and leveraging our existing asset and adding on to our existing asset, it'll improve coverage not only for first responders in the state of Colorado, but it'll improve coverage for the citizens of Colorado, and it'll improve coverage for those first responder agencies in Colorado. So overall, this public-private partnership delivers significant value, not just to the first responder community, but to other entities inside the state of Colorado. Our three main areas that we really focus on how we address the 16 objectives are around availability, operability, and innovation. In the AT&T FirstNet partnership, we are bringing innovative areas that have never been done for first responders and public safety before. And I'm going to talk about those, and those are really in the green boxes that are highlighted on this slide. And then we can step back and talk about some of the other areas. I'm going to start with cybersecurity. And I start with that because I think that was also highlighted in the 911 note that was delivered out there as well. AT&T monitors 150 petabytes of data per day in our network. We have 8 global security NOCs, and part of our delivery for FirstNet is a dedicated FirstNet security NOC. So not only are we protecting the FirstNet core, right, we're dedicating the security NOC for FirstNet with over 100 individual staff in that security NOC. So we're bringing tremendous expertise in cybersecurity to this partnership. In addition to that, we're bringing connectivity capabilities that allow for first responder traffic to never traverse the internet, to be able to connect into first responder applications and secure that data and encrypt that data in transit and through the network, as well as enable device management capabilities inside of a portal that each public safety entity has control over their configuration policies, which is part of our local control capability that we're also bringing, which gets me into local control. So in local control, each public safety entity will have their own portal that they will be able to manage their individual users
and add features, services, capabilities, make changes on the fly. And in that portal, they'll have an interface to their device management, to several device management integrated device management solutions that allow you to control the policies on those devices, have access to different applications, as well as be able to manage any account-related activities. Obviously, each public safety entity will need an administrator for that, local control, but also part of local control is an incident command interface. Incident command interface gives you, the public safety entity, the ability to manage the QPP, the priority and preemption of the different users that are assigned or that are part of your deployment. In the management of the priority and preemption, you can establish different types of classes based on different types of first responders that are inside of your deployment, so that you're in control of who has priority and preemption at a higher value than other individuals. Now, that leads me into priority and preemption. As part of this relationship, AT&T bringing that $180 billion asset, which is all of our commercial bands, will be turning on priority and preemption across the entire AT&T LTE network. So whether it's band 14 or it's our other commercial bands, there will be a common customer experience across all bands when it comes to priority and preemption and other capabilities. And I want to make sure that everyone in Colorado on this call understands that from a spectrum holdings perspective in Colorado, AT&T has over 162 megahertz of spectrum. And then we will be adding another 20 megahertz of band class 14 spectrum. So that puts us at a very deep spectrum position in the state of Colorado. And Ken, I don't know if you have any comments on that or if you want to make any comments.
I mean, just for me as a local RF guy, it just becomes exciting that all of that is available right away. We don't have to wait for deployment, which is going to take time for band 14. We're not waiting on that asset to be deployed. It's just that it's the existing LTE assets will become immediately available.
So I'm going to pause because usually at this point in the discussion, there tends to be a lot of questions that pop in.
Well, how much of that bandwidth is dedicated to LTE versus just G2 and G3?
I don't have that off the top of my head right now, but I can tell you that our focus is advancing the LTE network extensively. That is where much of our capacity and coverage investment has gone in the last several years.
And we've invested
$575 million in growing that network, over the last 3 years in Colorado, just in Colorado. And the vast majority of that has gone to LTE expansion.
Just so the board knows, when we met with Garrett and Ken last Friday, one of the issues I brought up that it didn't really dawn on me until after our initial meeting was in areas where they don't deploy band class 14, is it going to be an issue with some of the nuances that are associated with band class 14, specifically the high-powered devices? So I don't know if you guys have researched this yet, but you know, the way we read the law, the only band class that could transmit in the high-powered mode up to 1.25 watts was band class 14. So if there was an area that didn't have band class 14, maybe had a bunch of other bands and all the network functionality, but that high-powered device wouldn't be able to operate in that. So that was a question we posed, and so that we guys done some research on that.
Yeah, so I had a briefing this morning on that. I anticipated that might come up today. And so it's my understanding from a briefing I had on it, and I may be off here, so pop in, correct me if I am, is that the standards were built for high-powered UE associated with band class 14, right? And AT&T understands that, and we're in the process of developing an approach around that. We also understand, though, that standards were not built around high-powered UE on the commercial bands, right? Other than band 41, which is a Sprint band, and it got way too technical for me to explain to you why that was, right? But it had everything to do with the SAR ratio of the device output and the wattage. And but with that said, we're working with OEMs around high-powered UE and understanding those standards. And when those standards become available, you know, we'll be able to have a plan that we'll be able to talk to folks about.
So as of right now, the only band that can transmit the high-powered UE is band class 14.
Right.
But
From a standards perspective.
that's what I meant. This is all driven by 3GPP. So I'll go back to the second part of your question.
But we're not, and I just want to be clear, we're not against doing it. We're just trying to, we want the standard, right, to be ratified around it.
Well, so, okay, so that's what I'm getting at. So is AT&T going to begin working with 3GPP to look at having that same standard for some of the other band classes that might be in your quiver, so to speak?
My understanding from the briefing this morning is that yes, the answer to that question is yes.
Okay.
That we are monitoring and participating in discussions around those standards and in high-powered UE.
You know, as I thought about it though, as the local Colorado guy, you know, and I'm actually not going to talk about the technical aspect. I'm going to talk about the deployment aspect, which is, that's an important piece of it, but we don't have to wait for that. You know, the entire Colorado network, the LTE network, becomes available right away. We don't have to wait several years for that band 14 to be deployed. And as we continue to talk about priorities across the state and where those are, that can be part of the discussion, but we don't have to wait to move forward.
So that brings up a good question though, because so you got band 14, which we'll be waiting on that. Obviously, we'll be waiting on the devices, right? Because I'm sure we don't have a large selection of band 14 phones out there today. So the AT&T network becomes available to everybody. So if you have a lot of these agencies that aren't on the AT&T necessarily, so 6 to Denver, you know, we got several thousand phones and they're primarily on Verizon. And let's say if the city wants to take advantage of being on the AT&T network with priority and preemption, now what plans are you guys going to put in place where they switch into the first net and they're on basically AT&T phones, but then they're going to have to switch, you know, to a band 14. When the band 14 phones, are you guys going to have a plan to transition people through, saying, okay, here's your interim equipment, which is current AT&T phones, with a plan to put you into a band 14 phone when they come there?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So the answer to that is, you know, actually, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. It's something that I've surfaced, right? Because what you're asking about is like, okay, if we subscribe to FirstNet before band 14 deployment, and then a device comes out and it's band 14, how do we get the folks to band 14? Mm-hmm. I think the way that the build, and you have to keep me honest on this response, Ken, is that two things. One, phones are ringing off the hook of all the OEM device manufacturers now, trying to identify how they make sure that we know that they're putting band 14 in their devices, right? As well as other commercial bands, right? Second thing, just from a deployment perspective, I think that what you'll find is that band 14 will be utilized in a lot of cases for additional capacity in areas. And because of that, with priority and preemption available as well on the commercial bands, that the customer experience on a device that does not have band 14 in it, in that situation, would be, you know, they'd have priority and preemption if there was a capacity issue there.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I'm glad you put it that way. There's been a lot of focus on band 14, and it's an important band, but it's not a limiting band under the AT&T proposal. And because everything's going to be available right away, and City of Denver is a great example, I've already got up to 4 and even 5 layers of LTE available, you know, in a Denver metro area, and most often at least 2 layers available in many of the other places that are available today. So normal life cycles of devices, I think, will answer your question as we move forward.
But I think the life cycle is an issue if it's like a vehicle modem or something that may be in a vehicle for several years versus a phone.
Right. The good news on that one is that our partners like Cradlepoint and Sierra, they have commercial band and band 14 devices available today. Right.
Yeah, actually, I think more what Chief said, because and most of those devices can just plug, you know, you can plug in multiple SIMs, that kind of stuff. But I think it's a good point, because to me, it's not just the band class 14, it's some of the features, the ruggedization of some of that. That's where I see, because I see an entity knowing, hey, there's some of these ruggedized or some of these other features that might not necessarily be tied to band class 14, to our point, you said these devices are going to have multiple bands, but it's those extra features that might, I think, and I didn't think about that, Chief, that's a good point, about how do we, now, have you guys, completely, just ballpark estimate, do you guys have any idea when you think some of these, devices that we've all seen, we've tested, we've, seen the trade shows, might start to come on to mass market? I mean, you guys think we're talking 18 months, 12 months?
I mean, today we have band 14 commercial band devices available to you.
No, but I'm saying some of the new devices. So like a Sonom device or some of these other devices that we've, and I know Sonom's available right now, but some of the other devices that when you go to trade shows and so forth, you see their prototypes that have some of the more ruggedization features or some of those things that are geared not necessarily just band 14, but other functional purposes towards public safety.
Yeah, understood.
Have you guys, and I'm just going back to Chief's comment about, because it can help to manage expectations, when we go out, if we know kind of ballpark when kind of this tidal wave of new devices is going to hit, it will help us when we go and talk to local agencies and they ask us these questions. It will help us to be able to say, okay, let's look at your plan. What's your capital budget plan? Because some cities are 1 year, some cities are 2 years, some cities are 5 years. And knowing kind of what this device ecosystem looks like, knowing that it's all going to be an estimate, that might help us address some of those questions.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the type of user and what they're trying to do, like like you just said, right? Like there's certain devices that are already available today, right? Let me give you a rough order of magnitude timeline and get back to you guys on that if you don't mind. Because I've already been part of several OEM discussions. I just forget what the target timeframes were. It's not too far out. It's not too far out though. I know that much, right? Because we have normal cycles with these OEMs already on providing refresh devices to the marketplace. And so now it's an additional component that they're adding into that refresh cycle and the way that we operate and work together.
Doug, at the last meeting with when Jim Bugal spoke, one of the things he brought up I think was helpful. We're already putting that into all of our RFP specs. As we go out and purchase from the Samsungs and the Apples and the LGs of the world, those are part of our requirements. Because remember, because of the private-public partnership, we have interest in seeing band 14 devices get out as quick as possible, so that when our devices, the public side of it has access to that network, we'll be able to take advantage of that. So, I don't think we're multiple years away by any stretch of the imagination. It'll happen pretty quick.
Yeah, the process is in the document called the 13340, and I know that we've put in there. Yeah. So, any other questions on the phone or in the room?
Yeah, I have one.
I have one as well, but Chad, go ahead, because it's probably the same thing I'm going to talk about.
Okay. So this is Sheriff Day out on the Eastern Plains, and one of the things that comes to mind when you talk about one of the advantages of the AT&T plan is getting to take advantage of the AT&T network. A good portion of this state, or at least the portion that I'm the most concerned about, your coverage, or what your coverage map says anyway, is that it's third-party coverage. So how does your third-party contracts play into this plan, and specifically when band 14 does become available, will that apply, as well as the priority and preemption? We're being told now that that's just not something that's possible with your third-party partner out here.
Yeah, so actually Brian asked a very similar question. I guess that was just last week. It feels like it was a month ago, but it was just last week. So the objective there's a deeper answer here on how traffic routes, et cetera, but just high level. The objective and the way, and keep me honest here too, Ken, is that we're working with roaming partners to enable them to be able to distribute the priority preemption capability on their network, make sure that the traffic's tied into the FirstNet core for those roaming partners, and making those investments with them or by us to provide that.
Yeah, Sheriff Day, the discussions are happening with the roaming partners right now. You're right in saying that capability is not available today, but it's not available here in Denver today either. And as that core network is built and comes online towards the end of this year, and those features become available, our discussions with the roaming partner, whether they build it or we build it, are underway right now.
And
but that's the goal.
To your point about coverage, though, if you could tell us where you have challenges in coverage, we can make sure that we start to get, because part of this relationship, right, is helping us understand where we need to improve in the state as well from a coverage perspective. So we can have a good dialogue around that and be able to prioritize locations as we look at a build out over, the next 25 years. I mean, I just don't look at this as like the next 5 years, right? This is a evolving network.
And whether that's, once we talk about those priorities, what's most important to you, we have that discussion with our roaming partners and ourselves, right? It's part of the same discussion. Is that something that we want to work with them to build out, with more strength, or do we need to go in there and build it out? Either way, it's a discussion about it moving forward.
So either way, though, the answer, one of the answers at least, is that these third-party partners that you have, the roaming partners, are part of this plan. And part of the reason that that's important to me is that I mean, currently we're a customer of one of your roaming partners, Viero, and when we leave Viero land, as I call it, and end up roaming on your network, it seems that my connectivity, my service, I'm not sure the right word to use, but is turned down pretty significantly. I mean, my phone sucks when I get to Denver, and that's and that's because I've transitioned out of the Viero network into their partners, and one of which is you guys. So will that issue be addressed in the opposite direction? I mean, will I experience that in the opposite direction if we end up on a FirstNet plan?
You lost me a little bit in the opposite direction. I guess I was thinking too much about some of those policies, since we were talking about policies earlier, are made by the roaming partner themselves on what they want that experience to be like when you become a roamer on my network. There's choices and decisions that they've made for their customers on that. I actually really glad you used that example because I want to talk to our national roaming team about that. But those are choices that may be beyond my control on the commercial network. But as we talk about deploying Band 14 and priority services on our roaming networks, we will be switching it. So we'll have a lot more control over that.
Okay, so let me clarify what I meant by in the opposite direction. If for example we end up being a FirstNet customer, and because of that your current network uses a third party, uses a roaming partner in my area, will I experience the same kind of turned down service, turned down connectivity, because I now live in an area where AT&T doesn't exist except through this third party contract?
So I understand now. I don't know the answer to it, but I understand the question to go ask. I'll have to look and see what our current agreement and future agreement looks like with that partner.
The intent is to have you operating off of the same core, right?
Well, yeah, but I think what Chad's getting at is, because he's right now on Viero, his home network is Viero. Obviously, the relationship between you guys and Viero, when it roams from Viero to AT&T, there's a certain level of performance that is much lower on your network than it is on the Viero network. So I think that the key is, in all these roaming agreements, no matter where you're at, is the level of performance of the network going to be the exact same, no matter whether you're on AT&T or a partner?
Yeah, I'll use me as the example, right? So I'm here, Denver Metro, obviously on the AT&T network. When I go out to Yuma County, is my experience very similar? And I'll have to see what policies we currently have in place. I don't know the answer to that right now.
But when it comes to FirstNet, though, the objective and the way that this is being built is that the traffic is off of the same core, right? From a roaming perspective. So it's
Yeah,
not-
if we
it's not-
advance several years and I'm a first responder in Denver Metro and I go out to Yuma County, I should be getting on band 14 and that would be switched by AT&T.
Yeah, that's switched by AT&T, even though it's leveraging possibly the roaming partners' towers or where they're backhauling their traffic, everything still comes back into the FirstNet core, right? So your question, Sheriff, is about AT&T to Viero. What we're saying is that, and vice versa, what we're saying is that when the FirstNet core is in place and we have the service available that we were just describing on the Viero towers, that traffic will be switched by AT&T inside the same core. Some of your challenge, and I don't know what your challenge is, and Ken's going to follow up, it could be also that there's two different operating cores, right? So, and that's where Ken was talking about the policies that could be controlled. So our objective is to unify that to have a single experience on a single core.
Okay. Yep. I think that answers my question. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a great way to make me think about it. I appreciate that.
You bet.
All right, there was one other question. Was it the same question?
It was from me, this is Paula, but it had to do exactly with what you were talking about. And do you have Jim Finlinson, sir, do you have anything to add or question?
No, I just think we have the same question. I mean, you've got the bandwidth, but we're not seeing the AT&T coverage here, and we're not seeing additional towers being built to improve that coverage here. So we don't see any immediate change in that with.
Yeah, and I would think that would be the case with most of the rural parts of Colorado, which is most of the area of Colorado. So that's where we're coming from. It sounds really exciting, all of the device talk and how it's going to access the network and security, but we're still quite a ways down the road, I think, before we're going to see any benefit from FirstNet.
Understood. And I think what's important is if you can highlight those areas you're specifically talking about. And I guess, Brian, just so I don't know the procedure here, would it be to get them to you and Kim if they identify those areas that they have coverage concern with, so that we can then get that feedback, or how do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think as kind of we talked about Ken and Garrett, I mean, pretty much you can draw a line, and from I-25 West, you'll get very similar feedback to what Paula just said.
Okay.
For the most part. But yeah, we're actually meeting tomorrow. So when we met with Garrett and Ken last week, they talked about priorities. You know, certain areas where we know is bad. Maybe it's a corridor. You know, we brought up. You know, the path from between Summit County and Steamboat. That connectivity stinks, and yet you got 10,000 cars a day for a weekend going up and through there. No one can call 911. So those types of areas. So if for anyone on the call, if you have a specific area or a corridor or something that you have historically had issues with, please get them to Kim or Sarah, Ed, or myself as we get this to AT&T. But yeah, I think what, in general, I mean, this isn't just the FirstNet, this is a rural broadband. I mean, essentially, once you go west of the mountains, and pretty much west of Jefferson County, Larimer County, El Paso County, that corridor, you basically, what Paula talks about is what we hear. So.
Okay.
Is there a way to get like test posts or something? Because some things may have changed and we may not know. Or
yeah, absolutely.
We actually, we have the application through NetMotion, and then Ed's working with Garrett to use Sonim devices, and we will happily give them to you if you're out and about or you want to throw them with a responder. We can't pay for drive testing through the grants, but we can pay for the software to aggregate the data.
Well, we should have all those next week. I'm just answering an email right now, and Garrett's been working on it.
And I think we're working at 10, right?
I've been waiting to get the IMEI.
Yeah. So
that's not been added, it's been Sonim.
No, I just 10. We should have like 10 devices, right? 10 devices.
Sonim's the one providing, so I don't have to count.
They've got 5 that he's already worked out, and we've got an additional 7, and we're asking if we can get 10 for those.
Cool.
And this, again, Ken here for AT&T Local, this is probably the #1 issue for me locally, is to identify and rank these priorities. We can't just say Eastern Colorado or north of I-70, right? We really, a cell site covers a few miles. And so we need to nail down these stretches of road and how they rank and are most important to each individual. And then we'll look at the SPOCs here, so that we can manage investment through the, coming years of this partnership and hit the highest priorities first. And I know that those are hard to nail down. Everybody wants their priority to be number one, but we can't have 64 number ones, right?
And one way we've considered doing that is looking at, or asking you all to help us confirm that it's the population centers, could be a county seat in rural areas, the major roads and the critical infrastructure in your county, understanding how those are covered by the network first, and then going from there. Or if there's a recreation area.
Yeah, the place that you're going, maybe it is Highway 9, north of I-70. They go there a lot. Now that they've built the overpasses for the deer, it's not maybe as critical, but whatever those are, identify those, and we as a group can talk. And we've got funding as a company to pull forward in sites that we may not have gotten to for a while. We want to have those discussions. The sooner we can have them, we get them into the state plans earlier, and we're ready to go. Will we hit them all? Probably not all of them, but we want to get started.
To clarify, those of us using roaming partners, are you concerned with areas that the roaming partner doesn't cover, or are you wanting to know areas that the actual AT&T network doesn't cover?
I'm interested in the roaming partners as well. We have leverage with them. They want to do the right thing. They want to partner with us, and we want to see where they are in your priorities as well. So whether it's existing footprint or roaming partner, I'd like to hear about them and see where they are. Priority for you. Yep, great.
You know what else would, just a quick question on coverage. This is Randy with Signals Analytics. We have, as Kim mentioned, a number of data sets of sort of measured performance that we can access. What would also be very helpful would be just kind of AT&T's official stated coverage. And obviously you have stuff on your map, and in the state plan you'll have, as we understand it, kind of 90 meter data. You also have a Form 477 that you file with the FCC, and the latest version that they have made publicly available is December 2015, and you've almost certainly filed the end of 2016 form, but we haven't had access to it.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So we recognized that with a couple other states about, I guess it would have been about 30 days ago. And we have, and the FCC has the data, and we have, and I don't know exactly where we're at, but I'll follow back up on it. We've been asking the FCC to make sure that they get the updated data out there. Because I think what you're referencing is that there's a data set out there that you're able to pull to get the look and feel around what the coverage looks like. Probably I would guess you're using a mapping tool of some sort for comparative analysis.
We're looking, for instance, with shape files, and we have shape files for AT&T and for Viera, for instance. So superimposing those, presumably gives a good indication of, what your current footprint is. And the one caveat is that you've obviously been investing in building out sites over the last year and a half, since the end of 2015, and just those aren't reflected.
Yep. So let me follow back up on where that data is on getting updated with the FCC.
So when you ask them to publish those, will you ask them to do the NPR?
I knew exactly where you were going with that.
Feed of the FCC.
But I'm glad that you mentioned that a lot of that data will be available in the state portal when that opens up. And so we got to work through those NLICER agreements so that you'll have access to that data, and pretty detailed data. Well, and if we need more detailed data, I know that in areas that can be more available.
But I guess the question, we like to think we're a little more sophisticated, like I said, than circling on a paper map. Will that data under NDA, they're under contract with us, he can't do anything with it, acting on our behalf, will he be able to pull it down and manipulate? Right? not manipulate it to change any, let me correct that. Not
I was about to say
manipulate it
no, but then I was
to understand from a percentage perspective how that compares with, you know, what we are and aren't getting covered in the state, or are you going to provide 100% quantitatively a picture of that for us? For example, we have promised to go out at least at a regional basis and say, hey, IOC 1 to FOC, this is the percentage of your area we expect it to be covered by the network, either band 14 or priority and preemption coverage on AT&T's existing network. Are you going to be quantifying all of that for us? We expected to have to quantify it ourselves. So if we don't, that's great. But we want to provide it to our stakeholders, and they are expecting to see it. And a pretty picture is not going to be sufficient, right? We need numbers associated with what that deployment is. We are prepared to do the work ourselves. I'm not sure that you want us to, and if you don't, that's fine. Then you need to be prepared to do the work for us.
So Kim, thanks for bringing that up. I don't have a response for you right
Sure,
now.
yes.
I do know that we have statistics like that. I just don't know if those are captured in the state plan.
Right.
Probably
An
in,
aggregate statistic across the state is of no value to Paula and Mesa County.
Your question is the coverage of.
she wants to know like what population in Mesa County as an example,
Population
and square mileage.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, because saying, you know, what all the presentations you guys have done have been focused on national percentages, this percentage nationwide.
Or 99% in the state, which is 2G to 4G, 2G roaming,
Yeah.
4G roaming, which isn't, as Carl said, representative of what he's getting in Garfield County.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I understand the request.
And maybe just a footnote to that too is just definitions would be really, really helpful. So for instance, when we look at the, you know, Form 477 contours, just what does, you know, coverage mean the way you're disclosing it? And that there may be a standard definition for that, or it may be very loose, but anything like that you could provide that, you know, doesn't have to wait until the full state plans roll out, but it's really definitional in nature would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't mean to I don't think we can get in the weeds, I mean, it's not the right audience anyway, but with the WannaCry virus, I wanted to go back to the cybersecurity. You know, at least the vision and the intent behind the NPSBN is to bring together a whole ecosystem of data services that isn't available today. Typically, 911 data and PSAP data and agency data are completely segregated and isolated from each other. They don't interoperate, whereas NPSBN will allow that to happen. So I know that you mentioned that you have NOCs throughout the state, but a SOC is a very specialized tool set, very specialized skill set. So do you guys have a security operations center within the NOC, number one? And then number two,
We have eight global SOCs.
so you have SOCs as well as the NOC.
Yeah, no, so we have security, yeah, we have security NOCs. Yep.
Okay, so that's why I wanted to clarify. And then number two, how proactive?
And we're putting in one dedicated to FirstNet too. Sorry, I interrupted you, but
No.
today we have 8, and then we're building another one specific to FirstNet. So those 8 are monitoring everything all the time, right? 150 petabytes of data a day.
Right.
And then we're
Not
dedicating
from a
one.
network operations perspective, from a specific security centric perspective.
Those are security, global security NOCs.
Okay. So question number two is, are you going to proactively engage with the stakeholders when there is a security issue? Because again, this is a risk and exposure that isn't present today. So here within the North Central Health Hazards region in Colorado, there's a concerted effort amongst agencies to proactively work with one another and help notify and mitigate those types of cybersecurity incidents. So to that extent, if there is a FirstNet cybersecurity issue, will FirstNet and AT&T proactively work with those stakeholders today? We have a problem, and
I assume we would.
Specific action to help address those issues.
Yeah, I assume we would. Absolutely. Yep.
So I don't know if that would be any part of the state plan, any details about that, but that would certainly be something that I would assume most stakeholders in this area would be very interested in. More details around cybersecurity capabilities.
And I know that I believe on the agenda in Dallas too, there's a briefing on cybersecurity.
And I think we talked about this in the first meeting, but I mean, I think Scott's concerns will be amplified once we start really going out to the broad public, especially in the larger cities, with all the focus on cybersecurity. I think again we've got a lot of questions that are a bit selfish in nature. So I'm the CISO for this town or this jurisdiction. How are we going to do this? and what are you going to do? Are you, they're going to want to know, here's, how do we sit down and figure out the security over my network? And to Scott's point, a lot of places, we talk about CJIS compliance and certain network interactions, all kinds of stuff. It's complicated, and I think this is one area where, in that state plan, it's a double-edged sword because it is somewhat customized depending on what a city does. But being able to talk through that, I think, is going to be big because at least in our travels, the CISOs from the different jurisdictions are becoming much more powerful, and they have the ability to basically make or break things depending on if they like the approach or not.
Understood. Good question. Any other questions?
I have a question.
All right.
Back on the QPP topic, where you talked about the portals and agencies can manage prioritization with their agencies. How are you going to deconflict that amongst neighboring agencies? And I know in theory, day to day, there's enough spectrum to manage that. But if Chief State, Denver Public Works, well, I'll just think of, let's bring the Aurora theater shooting to Chief State's jurisdiction, and he's got 300 responders from 40 different agencies, and they're all on AT&T, and they're all #1 priority. How are you deconflicting that on a single or two sectors? Have you thought about that?
So the incident command interface that we're talking about is for each public safety entity, right? And then inside of their fleet of deployment, they're taking their users and they're identifying who has higher priority over their users, right? That entity is not going into Chief Tade's.
But if they're all in the same sector.
They might. So, for example, in the Aurora theater shooting, there was 26 different. What did you say? 27 individual agencies that all responded to that one area, and there's probably 1 or 2 sectors that filled that theater shooting, and the whole thing took 30 minutes. So the idea of a colt or a cow to get in and off with capacity.
No, it's not happening.
That's not happening.
Right.
So in that situation, how is that going to be managed if Aurora PD says, here's my security, or here's my priority, Denver says, here's my priority, Denver Health Ambulance says, here's my priority, and you start to and in that situation, you are going to run into capacity issues because you only have 2 or 3 sectors. And how is it going to be managed?
#1.
Yes, there's 7 #1s. Okay, well, this #1 is here, but suddenly this #6 becomes #1 from this agency. That type of situation.
Yeah, you're talking about the governance process around it, right?
Not like governance, but no, like in the heat of the incident. Right now you have in your level radio you have what's called a call out. That basically comes in and manages the top groups, and okay, we're switching this talk group to here. You guys go off this talk group. No one talks to this talk group. And in that situation, you would probably need something similar. Again, to manage all of that. So how is that functionality going to be working there?
So yeah, I mean, in its simplest form, what Kim's example was, is there's 300 first responders that show up that are all priority 1. How is that managed?
Yes.
I don't know the answer off that. We can ask and see if. But I think one of the values of the AT&T position on this is that I'd have to go look it up. But let's say it is only 2 sectors at the Century Theater, right? But it's 8 layers of LTE today. It's not 1 layer of just band 14.
I guarantee you the data for that event would have overloaded.
I understand that, and that may not be, but I'm saying isn't that great that we have 8 layers of LTE there today instead of if we were only going with a proposal of band 14, which would only be 2.
Yeah,
right? So your question is very valid, but I think that's one of the value propositions that we bring is that the entire network is available and we're not just depending on 1 layer.
Yeah.
I think what your question really highlights is incident command interface, 26 different agencies. Who manages all 26 different agencies inside that incident as to how they're prioritized?
And is there a mechanism to do that?
To escalate to 1 single user, right?
And
you're asking for a federated incident command interface.
And the answer may not be we have to work around, and the answer may not be exactly what we want to hear. Right. And I've always argued in those situations, you cannot plan for those situations. I mean, there are going to be things that happen in those situations that no matter how much you plan, it's not going to work.
Right.
And so, the answer might be, okay, in that situation, here's what the best approach is gonna be. We can't guarantee
Right.
everything though, and that's fine.
I mean, maybe in,
But-
maybe in the state
Yeah.
of Colorado, every agency during an incident knows that the true first responders have the highest preemptability on the network for their deployment. Right? Because you're managing the preemptability of the different users inside your fleet. So if they're responding to that incident, they're administering
Yeah.
to that level. So
Yeah.
that's why I said it's more of a governance discussion. There's also the technical discussion as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
So it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want a black eye to you guys or to eventually, if the state opts in and we're supporting this,
Right.
across the state, I don't want, you to say, hey, local control portal, and then not under the ramifications, maybe
Right,
once
great
in
question.
5 years.
Yeah, it's a great question.
But
Yeah.
And
then they say it didn't work, right?
the thing that we also don't want to do though is come in and say, this is what you would do, right? Because that removes your flexibility as responding entities as to how you want to manage that.
But then at least at a regional level, the NCR can say, okay, now when we deal with our TIC plans, we have to consider data and how the network is managed from that perspective, and it's a consideration for us to think about it.
Right. Okay. So just to move on so we can get off this one slide.
I've got 70 more slides.
So,
Do we like to talk?
no, but this, like I said, that's why I paused for questions, because usually this is what happens, right? Customer care, so 24/7 by 365 dedicated help desk. And when I say dedicated help desk, dedicated public safety first responder help desk. Inside of the local control portal that we were talking about as well, you have awareness as to the network, any anomalies on the network, as well as electronic ticketing, if you need to do electronic ticketing. All tickets, all issues that come into the 24/7 by 365 public safety care desk or through the electronic ticketing desk are opened up as public safety critical. So they take precedent. I think the other item there to make sure to highlight is in that local control portal, you'll become aware of maintenance activity that takes place on the network so that you're aware of that as well. And then finally, deployables. Is that the next slide, Gary, or is that 2 slides down? All right, next slide. So AT&T has a sizable investment in our network disaster recovery program. That comes to you as part of the $180 billion asset that we're bringing to the public-private partnership. But there are plans to provide dedicated FirstNet SAT colts as well for your requirements to deploy where you need additional coverage or enhanced coverage. From a capacity perspective, I think because that's usually what comes out of this discussion is somewhat a discussion on capacity, is to remind everyone that across the commercial network and across any SAT colts, across any of our distributed antenna systems, which we have over 6,000 DASs nationwide. I think, what was the number, over 100 or
Over
something?
120 in Colorado.
Over 120 in Colorado. You're preempted, priority and preemption on that. So we've seen SAT colts used historically for capacity augmentation. These SAT colts can still perform that capability, but predominantly they'll be used most likely in an incident coverage type situation. There will be a process that you will be able to engage in to get those colts deployed. This goes back to an asset discussion as well for Colorado. If you have deployables today that are associated to your LMR infrastructure, we have the ability to partner with you to work on how do we bring capabilities of our network to those deployables. In addition, customers have also asked us, and states have asked us, can we buy and own and house our own? And the answer to that is yes as well. So we recognize that this is a way for you to maybe address some of those coverage areas as we go through the prioritization that you may want to have cover, if there's an incident or something that takes place, that you're able to bring that out as well. And we're willing to work with Colorado on how you want to work in this area. And I think, without going into the offers, you saw that in the meeting that we had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, no, and just so everyone knows, that was a key point we brought up was, given our geography and the responses that we have, and sometimes that, you know, the response happens in areas that get blocked off, whether it be through mudslides or an avalanche, that the idea of a local jurisdiction being able to have their own assets and work with AT&T to turn them up when and where they need to is critical. So I think that was a good, you know, that aspect of the plan looks good, that they're gonna, you know, work with you guys as local jurisdictions to fit your needs.
Next slide, I forget what's next. So I think we covered this, but I want to make sure that, again, priority preemption available on all LTE bands. We talked a little bit about the prioritization of different areas, ability to request deployables, and then access to the 6,000, well, not 6,000, but 100 plus DASs in Colorado. And what are some of the big locations where we have DAS?
I mean, we obviously have the big ones here in Denver, Mile High Stadium, Convention Center, the things that are really obvious, but we have a lot of the hospitals as well. So, you know, those are important places.
Yeah, so with that, just to make sure everyone's clear on it, we don't have to go back and put band 14 or build a separate band 14 DAS now, because it's on the commercial network and priority and preemption will be there. In those locations and venues, you will have priority and preemption.
Have you guys had any conversations with school or any thoughts, and it's probably a topic conversation, but I guess, you know, again, thinking, you know, where it's needed, you know, to meet schools, and I know even with LMR, we've already struggled with LMR in schools, you know, when you go in the middle of the gym, it's in the middle of, you know, in the big school and you can't get any coverage. Has there been any general conversation about focusing on some of those areas? I mean, not just for us, but I mean, in general.
There's other states that have defined schools as critical areas.
Okay.
Because they treat them as tornado shelters.
Yeah.
So they asked us to do a coverage analysis of all their schools in their state, and it was a very positive outcome. So if you guys are interested in understanding that for your schools, if you give us a list of the schools, we'd be happy to take a look at that. The way that we did that analysis is, you know, we looked at the signal strength associated with outdoor coverage, extrapolated a little bit that there would be some coverage that would be indoors as well from that. So
the other thing I think it's important to realize too is our support of voice over LTE, which also gives you voice over Wi-Fi options. So schools traditionally have very strong Wi-Fi infrastructure, part of E-rate, and so the ability just our current offering has a smartphone will work over an existing Wi-Fi network, take a call, as well as to communicate SMS messages. So yeah, that's a great integration to our core that lets you do that.
Now, are you guys, I can't remember if we talked about this in our last meeting, but are you guys anticipating, I know there's some companies now that, you know, they're almost like little repeaters, you know, like they'll sell them at your home, you know, you can, if you have bad coverage in your home, you can buy it, put it in the window.
like Cellfi.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, we have partnership with Cellfi.
Okay, good, okay.
Yep.
So is there any thought maybe as a short-term fix to some of these big commercial or school buildings, being able to utilize some of that technology?
We have deployable metro cells, customer deployable metro cells as well. So there's a bunch of different ways to address indoor coverage depending on what the situation is.
What are the cybersecurity implications of that though? You know, with 40,000 hotspots right now, I don't get on your hotspots because, especially with work stuff, because I'm afraid of somebody just hacking in. And so when you look at public safety data, I think that presents a whole other paradigm. What's your approach to that? I don't expect you to answer today, but.
Well, I would say that you're probably encrypting your traffic. You most likely have a VPN client that you're utilizing or leveraging today. Those
won't be impacted by hopping on a public Wi-Fi.
I would say that you'd want to still leverage the same security policies that you have your users connect on: private Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, you know, home Wi-Fi, anything outside of your.
But if you're using that as an assistance inside the building, it's a little bit difficult because the officers are running in to turn the VPN on. Otherwise, you have it on all the time, and it could either drain the battery or like LTE. I mean, I don't use that on my LTE.
Yeah, I mean we're going to provide you access to those. If you want to implement policies to not allow that access, we can look at that.
Will DAS be treated differently then? Again, because if DAS or Wi-Fi's are a way to achieve in-building coverage, and I apologize, I'm not an engineer at all, so I may be speaking out of turn, and there's an expectation of security on that data.
So DASs are separate than Wi-Fi, so make sure you understand.
No, I know that.
So
I'm just saying DAS is an in-building solution.
And DASs are going to have the same security you would have on the macro network.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. But again, if Wi-Fi is a way to get into the mall, I know Jazz is now in malls, but I'm thinking of just I don't know.
I mean, a lot of Hilton
Yeah.
hotels have the AT&T network, where you may not get signal coverage, which would be good to have, but if you have security issues going in, that traffic's not automatically encrypted for those devices,
Yeah, I think
that becomes an issue.
again, you guys don't need to answer it or architect it today, but to address their issues, I mean, you're already offering these hotspots today anyway. So if you offered a specific SSID for obviously drivers that they're fine, these groups, that was a way to segregate the traffic.
Good. Yeah.
It would sort of,
Thank you.
yeah, it would help. Yeah. I think it'd be cool that, I mean, because then you could pre-program the SSID into a phone, so it would remember it. So, all across public safety, you would know this is the SSID for any AT&T white hotspot, and pre-program it into the device and automatically connects. And the public wouldn't, their devices would be out of. Yeah, so yeah. They'd be blind.
Well, I'm hoping it would connect automatically, because like, I'm sure your guys' system is like that, where Excel, or not Excel, but Comcast has a system, or if you're near their hotspots, it automatically connects you with credentials you download.
I think what Scott said, if you pre-program the SSID, you can, in the Wi-Fi, you can prioritize and say, this is my preferred network for Wi-Fi. So to Scott's point, if there was an SSID that you knew was nationwide across AT&T for FirstNet, and you went into that, if you had that program as a prioritized SSID, it would automatically connect to that one.
Some of this also can be managed through mobile device management systems that will be.
That will be in your local, that will be in your local control
so you can
portal.
decide to do that. For example, as an AT&T employee, I go into certain buildings, the mobile device management software has downloaded a certificate, and I auto-authenticate. And so as a user, it's, quote, magic behind there. So, that could also be some options. The great news is there's a lot of flexibility, and what we don't want to do is presuppose how it needs to work, because how it needs to work in one jurisdiction may look different than how it works somewhere else.
But I think you also have a level of users that won't understand the security implications. Rural agencies, smaller agencies, they come into the big city and think, oh, I can hop on a hotspot, when in fact they're agencies.
Oh, yeah.
So there's an education piece, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, I was just saying, to me, that's part of it. I think that this is a long-term element that is on you guys and us.
Right.
This is, I think the misperception that this is going to simplify things. This is actually going to complicate things for a lot of people, because there's more devices, there's more data, and I think that's something we have to get is, to your point, agencies have to take it on themselves to do mobile device management, and there's going to be a lot of effort at the agency level to implement this the way they want to implement this, and to manage it the way they want to manage it. Yeah.
And to be behind the scenes for the users. I mean, again, we don't need to try to architect it now, but just so you guys know, I mean, it's some behind the scenes too, because what I was going to fault what Brian said is, nor should they. A police officer, a firefighter, a paramedic, doesn't matter. They should be completely transparent. It's not their job. It's not what they're there to do. It's not what their focus is. So if they're running into a building to do something, or coming out the car, whatever, their focus is on what they're doing. They should have to look at the device. They already have to do that now with their radio talk groups to some extent. So we don't want to add another layer of complexity onto it.
Which they're so good at switching between talking.
Exactly.
Understood. I like your idea too. I wrote it down. Scott gave me an idea. All right, next slide. All right, so this is more of a wrap up, right? So we've invested almost $500 million in Colorado in the wired wireless networks. It says Washington, but I think that meant to say Colorado, right? 2013 to 2015.
That's when you guys read the slides.
No, not at all. So I apologize for that. 3,300 employees are working in Colorado as of December 31st, 2016. And more than $3.4 million contributed by AT&T, our foundation, our employees, through giving programs in Colorado. So the point of this is that we're talking about the FirstNet network, we're talking about the FirstNet, but we're a partner entity already inside of Colorado, right? And I'll end with a couple of key points here. I want to make sure that everyone understands that to build the network in Colorado for FirstNet doesn't cost Colorado money, okay? When the governor opts in if the governor opts in, right? Say when, if, right? However I want to say it. AT&T builds that network, okay? So we start to invest even more in Colorado. I think it's also important to understand that FirstNet, because of that investment in Colorado, back to what I said earlier, will drive better coverage for the citizens, will drive better coverage for the agencies that are non-first responder agencies, and it'll elevate the capabilities of the existing first responder agencies to take advantage of some of the capabilities that we talked about today. And finally, you guys have been instrumental in helping get us to where we are, us being FirstNet AT&T with some of the early work that you did, and then being part of the dialogue. And as I said earlier, understand completely and respect the due diligence process that you're going through. We're here to partner with you. This isn't a partnership where it's we're going to do state plan, and then after state plan, we're done, right? This is a 25-year, if not longer than that, partnership, right? This network's going to evolve, right? It's going to go 4G, 5G, 6G, 7G. I don't know how many Gs there are, but maybe look at the H. With that said, that's also included in this plan, right? And it's on us, it's on FirstNet, it's on AT&T for the subscribers to come onto this network, okay? So there's no cost to put the network in Colorado. It elevates the first responder capabilities with some of the features that we talked about. And the agencies still have choice. The subscribers still have choice. If they don't want to use this network, they don't have to use this network. There's no mandate that says that they have to use this network by authorizing the network to be built inside the state. That's on us to make sure that we are accountable to delivering the best service and capabilities that are attractive for the first responders to want to come on the network. So that's, this is a great meeting. I appreciate all the dialogue. I hope there's a lot of questions answered here. There's a lot of questions that I apologize I wasn't able to answer, but we definitely have a list of questions that we can go back and funnel information back to this board. So I appreciate everyone's time and energy today in this meeting.
I'll continue to do your champion, and then we'll also have Garrett to work with side by side. And so we're partners in this, and we want to hear what you say and make it a network that you like.
We have Chief had to step out, but do we have any other questions?
This is Emil. I just had a quick question. I didn't hear a date. I heard, with priority services and with being able to offer that on the network. What about voice services with regards to public safety for mission critical voice and for mission critical push to talk? Do you have expected dates of delivery of that and availability?
I think the IOC2. I think that's when it's IOC 2 or 3. So let me get back to you on that, on the specific date. I just don't know off the top of my head. I apologize, Emil. But yeah, I mean, I know for a fact there's a lot of activity that's happening in the development of that right now. I'm based in Dallas, so I don't think I tell everyone that. So I see a lot of the work streams that are taking place in Dallas. I see a lot of the work streams that are taking place with some of our product organizations in the Washington, D.C. area as well. So I know that there's a lot of work being done on that.
I think that there's a lot of and growing interest in the idea of, the mission critical push to talk.
Yep.
I think that brings up a great point is our push to talk over cellular partner is Kodiak Networks. And we are also bid partners on this with Motorola. Motorola has announced the purchase of Kodiak. And so, we've got the 3 leading organizations involved with that. So, if there's anybody that can, figure this out, we've got the right people at the table.
The challenge, and it's not necessarily yours to solve, though, is in the world of OTT on MCTTT, pardon the acronym.
But I knew what you said. That's only a little friend. I knew exactly what you just said.
It's still proprietary, right? We haven't solved their interoperability problem in push to talk on apps. Because yes, Chad is not talking to Kodiak, is not talking to Wave, is not talking to Beyond, or maybe that's changing, but you're a way entity now, and you talk within Aurora, but that's it. Yeah. And so again, I know you can't necessarily drive that, but I think that's a bigger problem within the interoperability problem.
Well, I think to me, it's more of the standard. It's once there's the standards implemented from 3GPP, so that everyone, and that will force the ES chats and the waves and everyone to essentially comply to that standard. And then have you guys basically say, we will not support over the top push to talk unless you comply with.
And you can all talk to each other.
Yeah.
If that's the route.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Otherwise, we're in the same pickle we were in pre-P25-ish.
Yep, understood. We understand that.
Yep.
And I guess my follow-on question is, it doesn't have to be answered here, just something to think about and take back is, as we look at your coverage map and your roaming partners that you have, and as you build out your existing LTE coverage and replace, a 3G coverage with that, you still have, 3G, within the state, a lot of the western parts of the state, in Meeker, Kremling, Gunnison, et cetera. You can't enable quality of service on that for QPP on those networks. I don't know how you're going to enforce those policies and push down QPP and route traffic from a 3G base station to your LTE core without having to build out LTE. That's the first thing. And you can't do mission critical push to talk on any of those networks. Now you can do SONMs, or not SONMs, you can do over the top and Motorola solutions and things like that on those networks. So how are you going to solve that mission critical push to talk as as the state looks at that as a potential solution for areas where you have no coverage right now and third parties? How are you going to enforce quality of service metrics? You don't even have VoLTE roaming working nationally now in HD voice with your carriers within the state, and it utilizes the same principles.
I think to answer some of that, that's probably part of that executive sessions that we were talking around from a network perspective. I hope you don't mind me asking for that courtesy for the answer to that, but there is a strategy there.
So kind of just to dovetail, Brian, real quick on that. And again, some things have to be in executive session, but I think that this dialogue is pretty good and pretty important. And I think the more that you are open to having this discussion, these types of discussions and providing info, the more successful you're going to be, at least in the front range area here. And I don't mean this as to be divisive or as an offense to FirstNet, but FirstNet has said several times that once the state plan is delivered, there's going to be very little change. And the only reason that I would say as a local, these types of discussions are very helpful. And if you are open to ideas as to how cybersecurity and some of these other things are important and why they're important to us, and maybe some cooperation on how we can both sides leverage to make some of those changes, it probably would go a lot further and longer. So all I'm saying is that when the state plan is presented, the draft state, if AT&T is open to more dialogue, people may be interested in that.
I view this as a partnership that continues to evolve, right? So I think dialogue is in discourse is one of the best things we can do. It doesn't mean that on everything I'll say, yeah, we can deliver that, absolutely, right? But if you don't feel like you have the ability to bring me something, then that's my fault, right? And so we will make sure that we continue to have dialogue like this. I think it's one of the most important things. I mean, this is one of the most important things for first responders that's happened in this country in a very, very long time. And we have 140 years history of delivering solutions to first responders. And we want to make sure that we not only get it right, that we continue to do it right in partnership with those states, agencies that have given us the permission and confidence to be able to deliver that solution to them. So, we will have multiple dialogues. It may not be me here, but it'll be Garrett and Garrett's team and other individuals. Absolutely. I mean, this is.
And we have contractual obligation to it on our adoption rates. I mean, we have business drivers to make it happen, which is good. It doesn't do us any good to get a state to opt in and not see wide adoption. And I know Brian brought that point from your perspective as well. And so I feel like we're in it together because we want to see people move forward. And this isn't just, oh, well, we got Colorado and we're done. All we do at that point is have an opportunity to talk to agents.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the opt-in, opt-out, there's a lot of volatility in that decision. Sure. But it doesn't matter. It's going to be a network anyway. The opt-out, there's going to be a network.
There'll be a network here.
And I think what's going to really be significant, I think if you listen to the depth of some of this stuff, because we've barely scratched the surface for it, we're not going to get down into the proprietary stuff, we know. But one thing that we've lacked with FirstNet, and we hope we don't lack with AT&T, is if you overpromise and underperform, and that state plan better be very explicit on what you're going to do within certain timelines. Because you got to market this. Opt in, opt out, you still got to market it. The governor can say we're opting in, he doesn't sign the contracts for your customers. You got to reach a customer base. And one thing that has always debated is in the FirstNet build out, not trying to disparage FirstNet because understanding the acquisition was very strange to all of us. It was not in our norm of governmental acquisitions, what we're saying. But the idea, here we answer a lot of questions, come up with a simple solution for one of the major problems. But the conflicting thing is going to be that's what I'm saying. The expectation that you set in that state plan, even if there's an opt-out or an opt-in, it's good. Your marketability is going to be driven by your state plan expectation. The governor doesn't mean a hoot, quite frankly, in all due respect to the governor, to the people that really pay the bills at the user end. So I hope you focus on the user end with clarity and a reasonable expectation.
That's good feedback.
So, because you got to sell it, that's all.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be a dead horse, but I mean, exactly to Bill's point, like I said, I know you guys you got 56 bills.
In 6 territories.
Yeah, 6
Puerto Rico's broke.
And it could be a burden on our side too, but I mean, to the extent that once the draft state plan is delivered, we have an ongoing continuing discussion with some of the working groups, like Colorado, other local people who are interested. To Bill's point, this helps. Because again, like I was saying, not that that's going to be the solution, but if there's a real simple solution from cybersecurity, you guys are like, yeah, we could do that. That's not a big deal. Or you sit there and say something, that's what actually, yeah, that's not a bad idea. So, but whereas you just see it on paper and there's no dialogue, you don't know that, right?
Yep. So my objective in Dallas is there will be regional breakout sessions. And in those regional breakout sessions, we want to make sure that we have scheduling of these follow-up discussions, right? So that we can get moving into that point. You guys are going to go through your review process. You're going to make comments, right? You saw the timeline earlier. We talked about it. But I think as part of, comments are comments, dialogue is dialogue, right? So there's providing information and then there's collaborating around information, right? And I think that's really what we want to achieve is a collaborative partnership.
And with that, I'm glad you mentioned that. So it's really important to do this dialogue, that everyone from your agency get us the people that you would want to have access to the state plan portal. We just need name.
Or in your region.
So basically, because the time frame will be condensed. So the sooner we can get the names into them and have them pre-populated, the smoother it will be in terms of access. So if you know the 4 people in your agency that need to look at the full state plan to be able to have this dialogue, get those to Kim, Ed, Sarah, myself, so that once we send in our master list, it'll be much smoother. So, so we can always add people after the fact, but it'll probably be a lot easier if we know ahead of time. So that's the homework for all of you guys, is get us the names of the people, even if it's someone that might or might not, you're not quite sure, get us the name so we can get them a log on for the state plan portal. And then that will allow you as well in your regions to have conversations, amongst yourselves, between counties or regional groups as well. So, okay, any other questions?
Just want to say congratulations to AT&T for your pursuit of the RFP and winning it.
Thank you.
I think you're going to see, we're all going to see pretty soon, but congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next meeting is June 15th at 2:30. Location to be determined.
Excellent. Well, thanks, everyone. As always, feel free to reach out to Kim, Ed, Sarah, myself for anything that you might need, and we will continue to provide information to you guys as we see it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hit end call. Sorry.
Yeah.